Mark Ascioni, and I'm Kim Taylor, and we're from the FDA. We're specifically from the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and that is the center that tries very hard to make sure that your drugs are safe and effective. And so we are not Open Nation virgins. So we were at the very first DC Open Nation about 6 months ago or so. And we actually learned so much from other people's stories. In fact, Mark's going to talk to you a little bit about how we're sort of implementing some of the things we learned. And so we thought, well, maybe some of you could learn from our story, even though neither one of us likes to talk about ourselves very much. Well, I don't. Mark's a different story sometimes anyway. So that's what we're going to do. So we're going to talk about how we got started, so building excitement around an engagement in a crowdsourcing program. Then we're going to talk about where we are today, leveraging standardized tools for consistent results and increased bandwidth. And then we'll go into where we're going, increasing value through program improvements. And our agenda kind of mimics that, and we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So Mark and I started at the FDA around the same time, a little over 5 years ago, and crowdsourcing was not even a gleam in our eye. And we were far less cynical about bureaucracy at that time, too, I may say.
We'll see.
And we attended this conference by the Partnership for Public Service, Effective Internal Communication Strategies Workshop, and they brought up the concept of crowdsourcing. And we thought, this would actually might work at CDER, because CDER is a very bureaucratic entity. So you have the people on the ground doing the work, boots on the ground, so the doctors, the pharmacists, the statisticians, the admin people. And then you have the people way, way up, many layers above making the decisions. And the information flow isn't so great. So we thought crowdsourcing would be a great way to get the information, ideas from the people doing the work to the people making the decisions on the top. But we didn't want to just go and implement open ideation the way that a lot of people just start a chat room, for example. We wanted to be very strategic about how we did it. So what we did is we spent about 6 months talking to other federal entities who either had crowdsourcing programs or had crowdsourcing programs at the time. And we asked for their best practices. And from there, we decided that at CDER, we were going to start by focusing on short-term challenges sponsored by senior leaders. So a senior leader would have an important topic that they wanted to either get ideas about or information about. And they would pose a series of questions to a small target audience or to the whole center, depending. And again, the goals were the same, to drive ideas and information up to senior leadership and to engage employees. I'm just going to grab a glass of water, sorry. So we were pretty successful off the bat, I would say. Well, I mean, it depends how you define success, but we're giving ourselves a pat on the back. So we credit that success to really being thoughtful about our challenges, our communications, and our incentives. So the first thing is challenges. So people, when they approach us for challenges, we do not always say yes. So a lot of executives will come and say, hey, we want to do a challenge about X, Y, and Z. Or somebody within the organization will say, you should do a challenge about X, Y, and Z. And we will not do it unless these 3 things are in place. So we need executive sponsors that really want to hear from their target audience. They have a need for the information they're soliciting, or they really want to get a solution to a problem. And we need to know that they are committed, maybe not to implementing an idea, but to really seriously consider implementing those ideas. And then the moderators. The moderators are never the executive sponsors because they are far too busy. But they have to be people that are subject matter experts in whatever the challenge is about. So they are able to sort of ask really provoking questions from the people that are posting ideas. So that's the first point about challenges. The second point is focus topics with specific questions. So we learned from our market research that the more specific your challenge topic and the more specific your questions, the better participation and the better responses you will have. So we work very closely with our executive sponsors to make sure that those questions are really specific and targeted. And it has to be appropriate for a crowdsourced conversation. If an executive sponsor wants to know the middle names of everybody that works for them, crowdsourcing is not appropriate, right? It needs to be in a topic where having a conversation increases the benefit of the results that you get. So that's the second point. And the third point is interested target audience. We can't run a challenge with lemon pickers about watermelon picking, right? The people really need to have a vested concern or interest in the topic. And I'll give you an example. So we work for the government, and the travel process is like completely broken. It's ridiculous. So Mark and I, just to come here, had to fill out like 10 forms each, I think.
Yes,
and it took like 3 months to get approved to come here. Just FYI. So we had this challenge about the travel process, and it lit up. I mean, people were so pissed off and so furious and so full of ideas about how to improve it that it just completely took off. So that's an example of, okay, your target audience, they will participate because they care. So that's challenges. The second thing is communications, right? Everybody at CDER is really, really busy, overworked, busy, and so we really need to encourage them to participate, to remind them to participate. So we have actually a communications professional, someone from our communications shop that helps us with the communications. They write the emails for the executive sponsor. They think about different ways to get the message out. Our communications consider the target audience. So if we're going to announce the challenges at meetings, which meetings are we going to announce them at that will make sense for that target audience? And then they include multiple modes and touch points. So we learned, or actually Mark has somewhat of a marketing background, and you need to be hit on the head with something. You need to hear a message 6 different times, 6 different ways or something like that for it to really hit home. And so that's what we do. Our communications, it's over and over and over again before the challenge, during the challenge, and even after the challenge. And we notice participation spikes when we have a communication that's about the challenge. And finally, incentives. So if somebody asks me, for example, to do a survey, I'm much more likely to do it if somebody's going to give me like a $100 gift card to Target. So we know that, right? That's human nature. If you're going to reward somebody, they might actually do it. So we thought that incentives had to be thoughtful. You can't just do any incentive. So for some of our challenges, all of our challenges, I should say, ideas are really important. We want good ideas, but for some, it's more important to hear from a wider audience. Like, we really want a high participation rate. And so our incentives reflect that. For other challenges, if we get like 30 ideas and they're all great, that's a huge win, even if only 5% participated. So we make our incentives, we think about our incentives with that in mind. And so we're in the government, so we cannot give out $100 Target gift cards for our challenges. So we had to be really creative. So things we do, for example, we will, if we get a certain participation rate within our target audience, everybody gets a 1 hour early dismissal, for example. That's one thing that we do. If we're targeting ideas, we may say, okay, the 4 best ideas based on the criteria, everybody gets a 4-hour time off award, and we will fill out the paperwork for that. We've done coffee with the executive sponsor, who is usually somebody really senior in the organization. At our campus, parking is really hard, believe it or not, and so the big people have parking spaces that they can park in, so they can give their parking pass to somebody for a week. So that's something we've done. So we really have to be creative because we're very limited by the federal space. And I'm just going to kick it over to Mark real quick because I know participation rates are sort of a conversation point. So if you just want to talk briefly about our overall participation rate.
Yes, as it came up, I've looked into some numbers real quick. We have 5,000 people in the center right now. Of those 5,000, about 3,600 have created an account within our crowdsourcing community, so about 72%. And about a little over 1,000 have participated. So out of the 5,000, we're about 20% participation rate. Of the people who actually have signed up, about 30%. So we're talking about people who have at least voted, submitted an idea, or commented on something. So we're happy at how that's been growing steadily.
And before the next slide, I'll just call your attention to one of our challenges. We just picked some random challenges as examples. So this one we really were trying to look for participation. So there was an office-wide retreat in a particular office, and they wanted to understand which topics they should be talking about at this retreat. So we did a crowdsourcing challenge around that. We got an 80% participation rate. And then tangible results that actually came out of the retreat, but had actually been sort of feeded, if you will, I don't know if that's a word, by the crowdsourcing challenge, where there's a new office newsletter now, there's a new recognition process for employees that do a good job on certain things, and there's recurring all-hands events for that particular office. So, like I said, we were fairly successful starting out, but like the NYU crowd, this is not at all our full-time job. This is sort of our pet project. So, and when we did our market research, we were told by these other federal entities that to be successful, you need at least 1 or 2 full-time crowdsourcing people, teams. We do not have that. There's no way we're going to have that. So we had to be really efficient. And so how do we overcome that? So standardization, basically. And we'll go through these 3 areas in which we've standardized. So when somebody approaches us about a challenge, or we approach them about a challenge, we usually sit down with the executive sponsor and the potential moderator and give them the elevator speech about crowdsourcing and our history and hear a little about what they want to do. Is it appropriate for crowdsourcing, blah, blah, blah. And then we send them away and we say, hey, go fill out this initiation template. Do you just want to flip to that? So basically, they have to go and think about, okay, the objective. What do I want to hear about this? What do I want out of this challenge? Who's going to be the moderator? When do you want to hold these challenges? What's your target audience? What's your incentive? And then there's a bunch on the next slide. There's a number of, what's your introductory paragraph that will live on the site? And what are your draft challenge questions? And then on the third one, there's some features that they can choose that we've talked them through in that initial meeting. And so this really drives the planning for the challenge. So every time we meet with them, and it's not that many times, we use this as a guide. The communications professional and us will go through it and try to make suggestions, and we'll have meetings to talk about it, and we'll shore it up, and boom, it's done. So it's become like it doesn't take that much time, I feel like, for us to run a challenge because it's so rote at this point. The next point is a communication plan template. So our communications professional have put together 2 draft templates for us, one for CDER-wide challenges and one for smaller challenges. And they basically they suggest communication touch points, and then they can be customizable to the challenge. So when are these meetings being held? Who should send out this particular email? What should the digital poster say, et cetera, et cetera. And our communication plan is important. It spans pre-challenge, so getting excitement around the challenge, during the challenge, and then after the challenge. So really not just dropping it afterwards, telling the target audience, hey, the challenge closed. We got this many ideas, this many votes. These are the ideas that are sort of exciting. And then from there, maybe a few months later, if anything's going to be implemented, we make sure that's communicated too. And then finally, moderator checklist. This is just best practices for a moderator. So just as they moderate to make sure that they're doing these things. If you could just go back. Thanks. And this is just another example of a successful challenge that we did. So that's where we are now. And I'm going to kick it over to Mark now to talk about where we're going.
All right. Thank you, Kim. So what do we do with this extra bandwidth? This next section is what I like to call taking all the ideas we learned from you and passing them off as our own. You'll see some of them were actually already highlighted by our friends from NYU. There's kind of 3 areas we're focusing in. First of all, we actually want to take some time to study ourselves and understand how can we make the community better, how can we better understand why people are using it, and really use that to grow not only our strategies moving forward, but also our communication plan. Another area we want to look at is how do we better connect with our customers. So the saying, as we learn more about our customers and what motivates them to participate or not to participate, how do we tailor our communications to make sure we're giving the right message to get them involved. And then finally, really bring the value to the forefront. A couple things we're looking in there is using the stages within IdeaScale so we can be transparent from idea generation all the way through to some sort of action that's coming from the challenge, and also creating one central place for everybody to be able to see what crowdsourcing is about, what we've done, and what that looks like. All right, so why are we going to evaluate? Well, frankly, this is our day job. We're a team of evaluators. There's 5 of us on the staff, and 3 of us are already part of the crowdsourcing team, so let's get the other 2 involved. So going to give them a chance to take a look at what we do and really talk to our various stakeholders and understand what we can do to really improve the program. So there's 3 different sets of groups we want to look at. First of all, the broad audience. We want to understand between our different types of audience segments, those who lurk, who just come in but don't actually take any action, those who participate, and we'll get into these segments a little bit more, but maybe just fill out and kind of go away and don't come back, and then those who are super engaged. What motivates them? Why are they doing this action, and what can we learn to help move more people down that funnel? Also to understand how we can really improve the process and the community. We want to talk to our moderators. Moderators are by far the most important people to our challenge process. Yeah, we need the sponsors. We need someone who's going to take the ideas and actually do something with it. But the moderators are the ones who drive and show that engagement. Having active moderators involved in the discussion shows that people are engaged and can help foster that conversation. So let's learn from them. What can we do to improve it and really get an understanding how crowdsourcing has impacted their offices? And then finally, we want to look at our sponsors as well and talk to them. How have they been impacted by crowdsourcing? But also, how can we increase our presence across the center and really show the value and get more people involved and more people really trying to engage crowdsourcing as a way to improve their operations? Our funnel. So we've talked about lurkers. We've all done it. I do it all the time. That's one area of group of people that we want to find out why are they just coming and not participating. Our hypothesis is, maybe there's some fear involved. I don't want to put something out there because we might get some backlash. Even though they can participate confidentially, no one really trusts that. But to find out what's preventing them from actually taking that step and coming in and at least submitting an idea or commenting on something. The next layer we have are these participants. Let me know if this is a common problem for people. A lot of times when we talk about crowdsourcing, everybody still views it as a survey. They say, all right, here's the 3-4 questions I want to ask. I go in, I answer the questions, I'm done, right? What's this about coming back? That's one of the things we want to find out is why do they just do the single participation? What's preventing them from trying to engage more and what could motivate them to do that? And then we get our super crowdsourcers. We want to find out from them what really drives them in there and how can we leverage them to push crowdsourcing forward across the center. I mean, we've got within some offices groups that are really engaged. We had our Office of Generic Drugs recently do a challenge. 500 people and 250 of them participated. It was a pretty crazy amount in terms of how much they were really submitting ideas, but also the number of comments that were coming through and the ideas of just the 500 people there. We were seeing some of them having 15, 20 comments deep, really just continuing the conversation over the 2-week period. All right, where are we? Oh, yes. How many people use SharePoint? How many people like SharePoint? Yeah, okay. I'm told I'm supposed to use it. Can attest, I'm very bad at it. But that's where our work is. We're using SharePoint all the time for projects and whatnot, and we're seeing more and more that we do have offices that are creating communities within SharePoint to have a suggestion box or open forums. But it's done just in the structure of SharePoint. It doesn't take the background of something like IdeaScale that can really help foster that innovation, that crowdsourcing process. So we want to take advantage of the integration. Just out of curiosity, has anybody integrated IdeaScale into SharePoint?
Not yet.
I was really hoping someone had. We want to try to do this, and you did a little bit.
Office 365?
Yeah, we are using it. Okay. Yeah, we'll talk.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't done that, but yeah, I know what you're saying. Yeah. So we want to bring IdeaScale forward into that community so that rather than having them have whatever SharePoint app they're able to create it in, we can use IdeaScale as the background and use the various workflow and automation features to help make that open ideation better. As Kim said, that wasn't our focus to begin with, but we're seeing these offices really looking to engage that and having staff to manage the 500,000 people that would be involved in it. There we go. The workflow. Yeah, this is an area we struggled with so far. Right now, I mean, typically all of our challenges do have these 4 stages. We ideate, so the crowd's going out there, submitting ideas, participating. Then we let the crowd, the staff, evaluate that. That's usually done through voting. Then it goes to the sponsor to evaluate, and they have a team, a committee that's looking at it and saying, all right, here's the ideas what we want to consider and potentially implement, and then hopefully something happens. Currently, that ideate staff assessment phase happens all at once. People are able to vote on ideas as soon as they're up there, and so what happens a lot of time is people are coming in early and not later, so they're not necessarily seeing everything. So they don't get a chance to really review and kind of help evaluate those ideas over the course of time. The sponsor assessment, that happens offline right now. There's no transparency. So why were some ideas chosen over other ones? It's really not helpful for people to say, all right, I participated, but why didn't you take my idea? And then the action part, we very rarely are able to see and show how the ideas have actually come to fruition. So our plan moving forward is to start using the workflows and first of all, break out voting into a separate stage. Here we'd be able to look at doing ideas and comments in their first stage, take it offline, clean things up, and get to a concise set of ideas that came in and try different voting options. I mean, right now, within IdeaScale, you can just vote up and down. But we've been working with the team and trying to see, can we try different things to vote, like using the funding stage where people could have tokens and say, all right, you get 5 tokens. Where are you going to put them across the 25 ideas that are out there? Get different ways to be innovative about how people are evaluating and rating those ideas. We want to utilize IdeaScale, particularly when there's a committee that's reviewing ideas, and see what factors are leading to them saying some ideas are viable versus some are not, and make that be as transparent as possible. And then finally, tracking the ideas and moving them through the workflow so that every idea has a logical flow from ideation all the way to the final actions that are coming out. Even if it's something that's off topic, that it go into a parking lot, or merged with other ideas, you should be able to trace from the beginning to the end what happened with each idea. All right, last thing we're talking about, we really want to create one central place within the IdeaScale community where everybody can get whatever they need about crowdsourcing. So we're putting up our story, which includes the background Kim went over, but also some infographics we went over to, or we developed to help show, here's what IdeaScale looks like. Now, we'll share all this. I will apologize. We had to put it in from one format to another, and we were already late sending the slides to Jessica, so we had to get it out the door, but we can give you the original versions of these. But we have one that talks about how to crowdsource and then how to actually do a challenge. The other areas we're looking into is we want to be able to show our history of crowdsourcing, so showing each of the challenges, which I know exists in IdeaScale today, but the way our community is set up, you can't really get to unless there's a challenge live. So people can't go in and actually dig into those. But we want to be able to not only have all those questions and ideas available, but summaries and what happened with them so people can really see what's going on. How to participate, information on what to do, what to build, how to go in and actually submit an idea, how to comment, and especially how to participate confidentially. And then finally, what you need to do to host a challenge and why you should host a challenge. And so giving information on how to contact us and really how to engage crowdsourcing. So with that, we'll certainly take questions. As you can see, our email addresses are up there. I will take this minute to at least mention we have a third member of our team, Emily Ewing, who couldn't join us out here, but she's obviously an integral part of everything we do. But any of us will be happy to answer questions now and going forward.
So you said that you began a challenge about the travel and anger and everything. Did management listen to you? Did you actually make the change, or are you in the process?
So
You're in the process.
We're in the process.
Yeah, everything takes a long time at FDA, yes. But
And it would be quite helpful, in fact, if we do have a question, if you could maybe share your name and where you're from.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, just thought of that.
Over here.
Hi, thank you for that. My name's Laszlo from Palo Alto, so this was no travel issues for me. First album was Yellow Brick Road. Is any part of your process, is it all done online, or do people actually have a moment to pitch their ideas to the senior executives? Do they get to share them, describe them, get feedback, things like that? I don't know if that worked at all.
So if people didn't hear the question, is it all done online, or is there a process where people are pitching ideas to executives? Right now, it's all done online. It's really, the way we like to pitch it is it's adding the brain power to the executive, so it's a chance to help shape the decision the executive is making. So the executive's not guaranteed they're going to implement any of the ideas that come in, but this is a chance for people to be able to plant seeds in their mind.
And to hear from everyone else. So you may pitch your idea to an executive, but the executive wants to hear what other people think about that idea, and that's the benefit, I think, of the platform.
All right. Oh. Yeah, thanks, Tim. Do something useful.
Thank you. Hey, I'm Ling. I'm from the World Bank. I'm just actually curious. I really like your presentations. What about the implementation team? Do you actually make the idea owners a part of the implementation, or do you actually have a separate implementation team from the sponsor team or something?
Yeah, it comes down to the sponsor. They're the ones responsible to implement it. That's an area we've toyed with of how can we get people who submit ideas involved in implementation, depending on that. But really, it's up to the sponsor and what they want to do with it. You got another mic there.
Hi, I'm Allison from Citi. Thanks so much for your presentation. Just a quick question about your executive sponsors and the participation numbers that you read. Congrats on that. Of those participation numbers, or just off the top of your head, were there any tips or engagement tools to bring executives to the site and to go on and engage and look at those ideas along the way? And the reason why I ask that is just because in some of the work that I'm doing, I've just found that that's a little bit of trouble, and it's just manually feeding those ideas, literally sitting down with the executives and giving that to them, when I'd love to bring them to the site and just make that happen a little bit more organically.
So our challenges are 2 weeks long, so it's not as difficult to have them look at the site for a period of 2 weeks. It's most important that the moderator does that, and the executive does get the idea report at the end. But that's something we strongly encourage through just conversations. But I think it's much easier when you're looking at a very short time frame because it's not open ideation. Yeah.
Great. Any other questions?
Hi, my name's Jeff from NASA. Question: your formal report out to your executive, is that a formalized process, or what does that look like?
Oh, it's an idea report. So we put all the ideas and comments in a package essentially, and then we also we'll make them an infographic if they're interested of the top ideas and that sort of thing. But like I said, we're experimenting with this voting period after, which I think will be more helpful for them. And if we get into stages where they can be involved in looking at the ideas and thinking through how and which ones to implement, I think that will help with that too.
Are you crowdsourcing the infographic?
Not at this point.
Okay.
Great.
Are you still going to show that? Okay. Any other questions? Jessica has. Oh, please.
I'm Carissa, also from NASA. Was it a struggle to get your executives to buy into this? I mean, I'm curious, like how you did that.
Very slowly, over time.
Get them to participate?
So I don't think we've had too many executives actually participate, but to get them to see the value of it, it helps. Our center director sees it, and so she will often say, hey, this is a good one for crowdsourcing, and we'll push it out there. And we've had several different executives that are willing to push it like that. But that, I think, is still a big challenge ahead of us, is how do we get people to really see the true value of being more and more engaged with the process.
Marianne from PCL. Just based on like the breakdown that you had from resources, I'm just assuming that moderator needs to put the most of the time for evaluating and preparing the report. And you said you have 2 week cycle for every challenge. I'm just wondering, what is the time that a moderator needs to assign to each challenge to, just because you are doing it as part of your volunteer, it's not your day-to-day job. So I'm just my question is the time.
So we actually do the idea report. We do a lot of the work for them. So the moderator's role is to sort of work with the executive sponsor to fill out that initiation template. So what is the objective? What are those questions? What's the intro paragraph and all of that? And we pretty much do everything else. And then during that 2-week period, they need to be very engaged in moderating the site. And then also working with the executive sponsor to determine what's going to happen with the output. But time, I mean,
Half hour a day.
half-hour day during the
Yeah.
challenge and maybe 4 or 5 hours before the challenge, and then depending on what's going to be implemented, you know, just depends.
Mark
on
O'Connor from
each
LA World Airports. I was wondering, since you seem to have a lot of users, I've been kind of struggling with the reporting tools within IdeaScale. Do you have any tools you've built yourself to be able to extract reports to quickly generate those management reports and infographics? Also, as a side question, does someone help you specifically with infographics? Do you like a graphics team that does that for you?
I'll answer the second question first. The infographics you saw up there were designed by our CDER graphics team, but we also do a little design in-house ourselves. So we've been working on the sponsor ones on our own. Data, I usually just go to the data extracts, and so I pull the raw Excel files and use that to build all the reporting out there. So we haven't built any tools to quickly go through it, but we just, we'll create what we need.
Great.
the raw extracts
Great.
really difficult. Do you have a tool?
No, but I can talk to you about it later offline.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing.